I must admit, as one who enjoys the movies, and especially the old classics, I have never been very fond of movies about Jesus or about the life of Jesus, either knowing the scriptures as I had studied them or just the different portrayals of how they portray Jesus. I've never been too impressed with them. The King of Kings is what it is. The greatest story ever told is anything but, at least as a movie, if not the story of Jesus. But actually, if I were to pick a movie about Christ that is my favorite, it would have to be the film Ben-Hur. The remake, not the remake a couple of years ago, but the Charlton Heston film is actually a remake from a silent movie. And in that, we see a movie that is appropriately called A Tale of the Christ, but Christ is not the main character. It's Judah Ben-Hur, and the movie has Jesus in the background, making appearances at key moments of the story, and the movie is about his effect on the main character. And so it gives a new perspective on the presence of Jesus and the story of Jesus, not about him outright, but the effect that he has on a character that had experienced a great deal of tragedy at the hands of the Roman Empire. And so we are reminded that the story of Christ and the story of Christmas is not just simply a story, but it is a fulfillment of a promise and of God inserting himself into human affairs and into human lives. And we are in very much a world in need of new perspectives such as this when it comes to how we understand the Christmas story, and even when it comes to how we celebrate this particular holy day and holy season. We become that example of these new perspectives. Because every year we look at the news and we hear the stories, and sometimes we just have to laugh at ourselves. And one of my favorite moments in a Christmas movie is from the film A Christmas Story, the story of little Ralphie wanting his Red Ryder BB gun. And on Christmas morning, as the two boys come downstairs and dive under the tree to start opening the presents, the narrator rather humorously describes the situation. And he says with the excitement of the narrator, "Christmas had come officially. We plunged into the cornucopia, quivering with desire and the ecstasy of unbridled avarice." In many ways, it's funny, but it does speak to some perspectives we see on Christmas. Because for so many, if not the majority of people, Christmas is a time when we get things. Even when we are giving, there's at least a tacit expectation of getting and receiving, ergo the practice of a gift exchange. I give you something, you give me something. And it's usually with people that we know, family, friends, and colleagues. Young children, of course, eagerly await the annual ritual of sitting on Santa's lap and telling him what they want for Christmas, what they hope to get from the big man in red on Christmas morning. Sometimes there might be experience of sadness and or disappointment when Santa doesn't deliver exactly what they were hoping for, and maybe the worry that the requirement of being good was not entirely fulfilled. And I have to admit, I can imagine families who are here at this Mass coming to church first thing on Christmas morning with their kids. All I can say is congratulations. And how some of the kids must be so hot to trot. But look at it this way. Just as you have grace before meals, this is kind of an elongated grace before presents. But for some, the consumer's perspective is something that is neither charming nor, as we see in some stories, laughable. This year, and even in previous years, we see an onslaught of shoppers on the first day of Christmas shopping, which used to be a Friday, but now it's Thanksgiving Day. It's been that way for the last couple of years, when in lieu of gathering to prepare for a meal, workers prepared and shoppers camped out in order to obtain the latest technology or the latest fashion. And this before a day, a Friday that we call Black. You look through the internet at some of the news headlines, and you see some very interesting, if not some tragic and disturbing ones, such as Mall Mayhem, Brawls. Man stabbed over a parking spot. Shopper kicked out of Walmart for filming a fight. Man attacked walking home with a big screen. Shoppers trampled in race for a $49 tablet. Salvation Army kettles stolen. And my personal favorite, woman pulls a stun gun in argument over a Walmart shopping cart. All these could be seen as symptomatic of the unbridled avarice that is made fun of in A Christmas Story. A consumerism that grips the culture at this time every year, even as many of us are gripped with a sense and desire of generosity, of exchanging gifts. Symptomatic of a nation that has ceased to impose, and yes, impose, the old values that have served previous generations so well. And as an op-ed writer put it, the dark night is rising, but it's not a Batman movie. But in the midst of all these crazy stories, over previous Advent seasons the last couple of years, I found another more sobering headline that read simply, "Little boy's Christmas wish is for Santa to give him fingers." Another headline of a little girl whose father was a veteran. Little girl requests of Santa that he bring her father new legs. Moments like these can be very sobering and bring us back to basics and give us that new perspective of this season. And our world is in need of new perspectives that bring us back to basics. What a contrast that would be to the frenzied headlines we see and the eager but edgy crowds we sometimes encounter during this pre-Christmas Advent shopping season. How different it is when we look to the higher light of the season. A reminder that it is the birth of Jesus that we celebrate. If we ask the simple question, how would Jesus want us to celebrate his birthday? In the midst of this, we hear a story in the gospel, which, while a very traditional story, we all know the story of Christmas, we see a new perspective in that when you really look at the Christmas story, it's not a story about Jesus. It's a story about the shepherds. They are the main characters. Jesus is in the background, and we see the effect Jesus has on these, the main characters of the Christmas story. In the midst of the shopping spree and the frenzy that we see every year, we as people of faith are examples of that new perspective, that different perspective. As in the midst of the Christmas celebration, the busyness of the season, the excitement, we come here to worship God first thing in the morning, to offer God that thanks for his only begotten Son. And we remind the world as people of faith that in the midst of this Christmas frenzy, Jesus is always in that background, continuing to have that very profound effect on those who hear him. What if we were to ask ourselves the simple question, how would Jesus want us to celebrate his birthday? What if we as a society began to move away from seeing Christmas as a time for getting and saw it as a time for giving? Every now and again we'll hear a story of families for at least one Christmas decide that this year they will not receive gifts, but give gifts. And not gifts to each other, but gifts to poor families, needy people, to those who are alone. What if for at least one Christmas parents encouraged their children when they sat on Santa's lap not to ask Santa for something that they want to receive, but ask Santa to give something to a poor child or a poor family who doesn't have as much? And we as parents and grown-ups know how Santa manages to deliver on those promises and those requests. How different it would be from the perspectives of the unbridled avarice we laugh at in A Christmas Story, or from the pre-Christmas frenzy we hear so much about in the news year after year. And we know that people and nations must be ruled by something. We are here because we know we are ruled by God, and it is God who calls us to something higher and to that new and different perspective. And Christmas is a good time for those different perspectives and to getting back to basics. And perhaps I think it's expressed more eloquently in another Christmas movie, which is a personal favorite of mine. And folks, I'm sorry, it's not It's a Wonderful Life. My favorite Christmas movie is a movie called The Bishop's Wife, with Cary Grant and David Niven and Loretta Young, about obviously an Episcopalian bishop. And at the end of the film, he is giving his Christmas Eve sermon, unknowingly written by the angel Dudley, in which he presents to his flock that perspective in the midst of the Christmas celebration. And the movie ends with the words, "Today I'm going to tell you the story of an empty stocking. Once upon a midnight clear, a child's cry was heard. A blazing star hung over a stable, and wise men came bearing gifts." We've not forgotten that night over the centuries, and we celebrate it still with stars hung over a Christmas tree, with singing and with gifts, but especially with gifts. You give me a book, I'll give you a tie. Aunt Martha has always wanted an orange squeezer. Uncle Henry could use a new pipe. We forget no one, adult or child, and all the stockings are filled. All, that is, except one. And we have even forgotten to hang it up. The stocking for the child born in a manger. It's his birthday we're celebrating. Don't let us ever forget that. And let us ask ourselves what he would wish for most, and then let each put in his share. Loving kindness, warm hearts, and a stretched out hand of tolerance. All the shining gifts that make peace on earth.